Welcome. This is episode 31. It's titled The Lord's Prayer Preamble. So we're going to talk about just kind of two verses, which I know are wild, right? We're going to start things off. Chris is going to read Matthew 6, verses 7 and 8.
And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him.
The next couple episodes, I don't know how many, because we're just starting this. We're going to be focusing on the Lord's Prayer, because I've been thinking a lot about it recently, and then we kind of shared it recently with a small group of people about just kind of like the implications of the Lord's Prayer. And for me, it's very interesting because verse 9 starts with and pray like this, and I think it's very interesting because it's one of the very few times where it's like specifically of how to do things. And I find it very fascinating. It's very interesting for me. So eventually, that's next episode. We'll get to that. But we're just going to be talking about those two verses this time. But there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. One of the larger things in verse 7, the do not heap up empty phrases like the Gentiles do. And interestingly, in the NIV, it says pagans.
Yeah.
Which, that's just a translation thing. But I think that's much more of a good descriptor. We think of Gentiles, it's the Gentiles. Woohoo, right? We don't think of it pagans. Ooh.
Which gets rough.
Yeah, that's much more convicting in some ways. What are our true motives in prayer? So it is, that clearly, that's a dense question and depends on the situation. But I think we find ourselves in these, moments of saying these fancy words when, okay, let me speak for myself here. I will, find ways to talk in circles and, come up with good prayers and do all those other things when I, either don't have anything to say or, I'm I need to sound like I know what I'm talking about right now. Or honestly, sometimes when I'm just I really don't want to pray right now. Where there's moments where it's a group prayer and no one is going to you're I guess I can. And sometimes you really feel it, but then sometimes you're just
I'm feeling a silence.
Yeah, I'm just or I'm doing this out of obligation.
Yeah.
Or someone asked me to, so I'm going to do it. So those are the moments where I'll jump in with those one-liners or just get really creative and fill the space with all those words.
I enjoy how you put that because even though I feel like this verse kind of implies or is pointing at those who kind of babble on for a long time, I think what you also just mentioned about even the short phrases or the empty phrases, the heart behind it, if it's not there, then that's also interesting. So I don't know if that was what you were getting at.
No, I think that was you did a better job of getting at that than I did. Where I think it's easy to look at this and go, okay, so we can pray in 164 characters or less. That's it. That's the max, right? Like a tweet. That's all we can do. I don't think that's necessarily, it's getting at that, right? But I think more, for me, at least, it's getting at empty phrases, right? Don't heap up these empty phrases where you really don't mean what you're saying. Or you just kind of saying it because it flows really well here, or this is this is a good way to get to this idea, or that's not the point.
Where it just becomes a performance.
Yeah.
There was it was some branch of the Puritans who, I don't know if it's still around or not, but they part of their belief was to never actually recite the Lord's Prayer word for word. They kind of used it as an example, but they believed that if you just recited the Lord's Prayer, then all you were doing was literally that, regurgitating and just trying to sound good, and it's empty words because it's repetitive. And I learned that recently, and I thought that was really interesting.
That is very interesting.
So they took it they took it very literally, empty words and repetitions kind of thing.
Yeah, because I think most of the time when you pray the Lord's Prayer, we talked about this where I said the example of you always use that lower register of your voice that's untouched. Lord in heaven, hallowed be. You don't I don't normally use that register of my voice when I'm having a normal conversation. But those those are the serious moments.
Right.
That's when I talk.
At a funeral.
Right.
Reciting the Lord's Prayer.
And so it's very interesting those we take everything out of it and it just becomes I honestly I have to say it from beginning to end. I couldn't
the Lord's Prayer.
I couldn't start in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so does that really show that we care about it or know about it or
I kind of agree with the Puritan stance of it. It's
that was very
how do I say it? More I think it's a good, like my church, my home church did it all the time. They're like, oh yeah, like we would say it every single, like it was like our ending thing. That's when you knew service was gonna be out. So you like I wake up when people start saying that. I'm like, yeah, we're about to get out. But like later in my Christian walk, it's like, oh yeah, like it's a good point of reference, and I think it carries a lot of weight. But another part of me also, like, you use the word motives in one of your questions. So I think what was it? What are true motives behind prayer? And I think I keep like getting back to that. It's like, oh, like, why are we saying these things? Where does it come from? And I think only you truly know your own motives. Like, it's easy to. There's this one instance that kind of makes me think about when we read this verse. When I was a freshman, I somehow ended up at a Bible study. It was really weird. It was in the science building, and this guy was very passionate, and like I know him relatively okay, but he prayed, and I kid you not, like I've been in long prayer sessions before, but like this thing went on for like we're going in a circle. So there were like what 7 of us. So I'm like, okay, like I'm already doing the math in my head. I'm like, oh, like this will be like roughly 20 to 30 minutes. But he was the first guy to go. It went on for 45 minutes. This one guy alone. And I sat there. I was like, I really need to pee. But I remember someone afterwards, like I left, and then I had a classmate who also went there. He was just super mad because he was just like, no one should ever pray for that long and for no reason. Like he was just super mad. He's like that was just empty prayer. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but like I just keep thinking about that incident every time I read this, and I'm like, on the surface, yeah, sure, maybe it does seem like a bunch of heaping on, but then do we know the true motives of this guy? What if this guy truly, truly in his heart believed and like prayed all these things? But who are we to judge? I don't know. It just bothers me.
Yeah. And to like, excuse me, to jump off of that too, it's like it skews our own motives after that. Because like one person prays for 45 minutes and there's 7 of you, and it's like, do I do a long prayer to follow up on that and seem like I'm as prayerful, or do I like try to shorten it to try to like get us out of here quicker because everyone's so like feeling that was too long, and then like neither of those are really a good reason to pray or like to alter your prayer or like I don't know.
I think it's very interesting. If you look at the passage, the use of the pronoun, the subject, and I do not know because the English language is stupid and doesn't have a plural version of a second person.
It used to.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're Slack City right now. It's so dumb. But when you look at it, says "and when you," right? So I do not know if that's plural. I don't have the translation. Can't look it up. I don't know. But it's very interesting. He's speaking to someone. So that goes to show like you have to look at your own true motives, right? As you were saying, you will never know how that guy felt. Maybe that was, that was it. That was really the true prayer. Everything was like, there was no empty phrases. It was just like true passion. But then like on the inside, of course, you telling that story, I was like, oh, that guy was just going. And like, I'm somebody who likes to talk, but like there's moments where I'm like, oh shoot, like that's a lot. And I was like, 45 minutes. Oh my God. That's a lot. And so like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, especially me just hearing the story of you also, I have no clue.
I don't know either,
And so it's very interesting how we immediately jump to the conclusion and go like, oh, that person, they have empty phrases.
Yeah.
But then when it's like, oh, me? Oh, like I just,
I just felt it.
Oh, I was just praying. Oh, like 45 minutes, that wasn't enough. Yeah. So I think it's like, of course, it's always easier to point your finger than at someone else than yourself. But yeah, I think it's very interesting. Like that whole story, how like, it was more of like, I was more concerned with my own reaction where I was like 45 minutes, like, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so long. It's so long. But then I was like, oh, like maybe not. Maybe that was what he needed. Like maybe that was.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
And it's also like, is 45 minutes in the grand scheme of things, like, is there such a thing as too much prayer anyway?
That's also very true.
Yeah.
But my bladder would disagree.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like if you're going to have elongated prayer, it's not like blasphemous to establish that beforehand and be like, maybe you should eat lunch because we're going to be going for a while, or like if you need to get up and leave to pee because it's going to be going for a while. Like I feel like that's not a bad thing.
But I'm also, as an individual, just super awkward. Like if people are praying, I will refuse to leave because I just feel like that's rude. Like I once had a bloody nose during like this open mic thing at my home church conference, and like I covered my nose and I didn't get up. One, because I didn't want people thinking that I had something to share, and two, someone was praying, so I felt awkward. So my entire sleeve bled all the way down to my elbow, like it was blood soaked. I'm just perfect, but that's a Tyler line, so I can't use it.
That is a Tyler line. You can't take it. I have all trademarks on that phrase. I have intellectual property.
Humble to a fault.
Humbled to a fault. Yeah, it's very interesting because there doesn't say anything about time in there.
Right.
But yet all of us went to length.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the heap up.
Yeah, I think it's also like they will be heard of their many words.
So it's like a logical conclusion.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but it's not like those who pray longer than 45 minutes.
Right.
Stop that.
Stop it, guys. Like, I gotta cut this line
Yes,
right
man.
now. No
Tap it
more.
out.
We're running out of that free Zoom minutes.
Yeah, it was very interesting how we went to that time conclusion. I mean, as I said, I don't think it was like illogical, but yeah, I don't think that's the point. I think it's that empty phrases is really like that's the key thing where it's like, oh, we really focus on how it looks, on the outside, but like, does that actually have any repercussions for us or anybody else? Yeah,
I like, yeah. While Tyler was writing this down, he kept saying the word simplicity over again because he couldn't spell it.
I couldn't spell it. It's true.
I think something that it reminds me like heaping empty words, like they want to be heard for their many words, kind of like the idea of like very like extravagant speech for prayer.
Like you go into King James mode.
Yeah, or like you start using big words that you don't even know what they mean. I've always heard that from like people who are like praying for the first time. They're like, I don't know what to say. I don't want to sound stupid, or like I don't think I'm gonna come off as eloquent. And then like for me, like it breaks my heart when I hear that, because prayer should not be used as a platform for like how well you can piece words together or anything like that. I mean, personally, I just want to hear it from the heart. That's it.
Right. Like the simplicity.
Yeah.
Like I was at a funeral once, kind of a sad example, but it was like we were having a service and like there was all the usual stuff going on. It was very nice. And then like the guy's son got up there and like he literally just got up to the microphone and he was just like, I love you, Dad. And then just like sat down and I just lost it. I was like, holy crap. Like that was so emotional. It's so simple. Like sometimes I feel like, I don't know. I've definitely had those moments where it's like really simple and like maybe simple equates to brief in that case, but
yeah,
it's like, wow, that can be powerful.
You said that, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, it like punched me in the gut, dude.
And that was like a secondhand story, and I couldn't even imagine being there.
But I feel like also simplicity. I don't know. The one example I always think about is like praying before meals. And because I had a discussion once with a growth group about how like sometimes I feel like I'm just obligated to pray before meals because that's what you're supposed to do. And she was like, well, that says something about like your frame of mind, And I was like, that's true. But it doesn't change the fact that I feel like I'm supposed to pray before a meal.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes I'm excited and I'm like really thankful. And other times it's like, I really want to eat this ramen that just came out of the microwave.
Yeah.
But I have to pray first.
My freshman year, we had a group of people, like, we used to do something, what was it? Communal Meal Finder was first made when I was a freshman. And it was like people would post when they're eating and everything, so then people would gather. But one thing that we were very adamant on was that we would gather and then eat, pray together. Like, the mechanics of it were so stupid. It was like, oh, like, we'll get our food and then sit down together and then pray. But then, like, people are waiting for other people, or, like, people like, oh, like, I don't know why we never just sat down, prayed, and then went to go get food. It was weird, but, like, that was also, like, the obligation, like, it became such effort for us to, like, kind of do it. And I remember there was one time, I'm feeling very convicted, because back then I thought I was very justified in my anger, but, like, looking now, I'm like, the guy wasn't wrong. There was this individual I butted heads with all the time. And he was at this meal. We all gathered food. Everyone was hungry. Everyone was angry. Like you said, Chris, like sometimes you just want to eat. So then I prayed. And I kid you not, I was like, dear God, thank you for the food. I pray that we enjoy it. And Jesus' name I pray, amen. And then everyone started eating. And then that guy was just like, that was an empty prayer. And I was like, who are you to judge the way I pray? It was just heated. But like, I actually left that meal because I lost my appetite after
really?
he said that, and I got up and left. But like now thinking about it, I'm just like, what was the purpose? What was my motive? And granted, I mean, I still think that the guy shouldn't have said it the way he said it because like it was just not nice. But like at the same time, I was like, where were my motives?
Yeah.
Sure, like maybe in the grand scheme of things, I wanted things to. It's like going back to that first thing we talking about, like, oh, like do I pray shorter so like we can get out of here earlier? What is the heart? What's the frame of mind? Like you said, Chris. So yeah.
And motives are like, I have a really hard time. And I think this is a human thing. It makes me sound like I'm an alien.
I was gonna say, you're human.
I have always had a really hard time going like, okay, so because I want to know everything that's at play always, right? I always want to know, okay, so I'm 10% feeling this because of this, and 8% because of this, and like, so I can be like, okay, well, this is not justifiable. Okay, so I can't actually feel that way. And so like I always want to find every motive, and of course, you're not going to be able to do that. It's not as much as I want to, but it's very like in that moment, sure, like that prayer was short, and we've all heard that prayer 1,000 times, and I'm sure we've said it 1,000 times, but like that doesn't make it any more or less genuine,
right?
Or like heartfelt, or like necessary. I don't know, just because there's it's short of words, or like it was fast or something like that, doesn't mean it's any less real. But then like also on the flip side of that, like there is a beauty and an elegance in thinking out your prayers and like using big words and using these things. Like if that's what it truly is about, then that's what it's actually about. Like I think of when I've like led worship and stuff, and like I've been thinking about my prayer before I like go, because some of it's like, okay, like if I just walked up there and was like, like that's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you're called to do things well. So like, and of course I'm a prepper, so I'm always thinking, but
idea machine.
But anyway, so like I'd go up there and I'd think, of course, before I say something, and I don't think that robs the value. If anything, like for me personally, I'm like, wow, like like
because you put priorities in, like you put it's a priority for you.
Yeah, and some of it's like there's
about
pressure. And like there's still moments where like your brain just like goes off and you just start saying things, but then like you're like, oh shoot, like wow, that was like not like whoa, I'm so profound, but like like that's how I like actually feel,
right?
And so like of course there's moments where you're going to say things. They're just going to be all these filler words and like empty phrases. But there's other moments where like those might actually like reflect back on you and be like, oh, wow. I don't want to say convicting, but like show you like what you actually mean.
That makes me think of two things. The first thing is that it reminds me that the gift of prayer is a legitimate thing. Like there are certain people that we know that when they start praying and talking, like it's so convicting. And they don't write or think about it. They just speak from the heart. That in itself, I believe, is a gift. But two, for those who prepare, like, I think that in itself can be a sign of worship. It is a sign of worship. I would agree with you, yes. If it's truly for the sake of, like saying if it's a pure heart, then yeah, it's okay to prepare.
Because then you're kind of, I don't know, you're almost assuring yourself, like, I can lead these people in prayer without having to worry about, oh, I'm distracted or stumbling over my words or something.
Yeah. For some, it's like mentally preparing and like it's like it's like if you're gonna speak in front of other people, you don't want to like improvise an entire talk, right? Like you want to prepare on it, you want to pray over it, and then even in itself, like if that for you is something that you should pray over, even though it's a prayer, and then share it, then so be it. That's powerful in itself, and I think it shows how much you care and where your heart is. So yeah. Because I feel like we've all been on the flip side where we don't prep at all, and then we're just like, time to whip out the good old phrases that I use all the time.
Right. And like, what is that doing for anyone?
Yeah, and like, of course, you never know what. I always fall back in this phrase of like, oh, my terrible attempts to do literally anything. Like, who knows what God's doing?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So that does not give me excuse to be like, oh, I don't need to prep for anything. But which though sometimes I wish I did do that. But yeah, I don't know. And like, I'm the type of guy who will write a script out and then scrap it halfway through and be like, all right, let's do this. So I don't know how much of a prepper I really am, but
it's also the context of when you pray too, right? Like, I think it's easier to have, I would argue it's easier to have pure motives when you are alone. Once you get behind a mic, once you get in front of a group of people, then you're just like okay. Admittedly, there have been moments where I'm just like, I hope I look good in this prayer.
Oh yeah.
So that so and so can notice me, and it's just like,
Yeah, or just like I like the spiritual points where I'm like, I want to seem extra spiritual.
yeah,
Right.
Like I don't think I'm a great like prayer or person prayer. Or speaking. Apparently, I'm not very good at that either. Like I don't think I'm like the all-star prayer guy. Like I don't know. I'm like prayer is something that like I'm okay doing in public, but I'm not like, oh wow, oh that guy, he's really good, right? Because we all know people like that, and I'm like, but then some people come up and be like, wow, Charlie, like that was like really elegant, and of course my ego's like, yeah, it was great. You tell me that.
feed me more.
But it's like, okay, if anything, that was a mediocre best, but yeah, and like, I don't know, motives are dumb.
Yeah,
This passage has been brought up at some other point. I don't remember when, but someone else has said it, and I like remembered it. And then had to search the internet because I didn't know where it was because someone like quoted it and I didn't remember the exact quote. So I was like, I don't know where this is. So that was an honest confession there. But it kind of goes with the whole idea of like our motives and how a lot of the times we can't find the right words. Because I find myself doing that all the time where I'm like, I don't know how to articulate this well. Yeah, I don't have really hard. I don't think that's just a me thing, but
English is hard.
Everything is hard, but English is especially hard. But this like verse is just like reassuring, kind of like brings back some things. But so Chris, if you'd like to read Romans 8:26.
I would love to. Romans 8:26. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words.
Yeah, so like I don't know, it's in some ways the opposite of the other passage, which is very Tyler Page and very fitting. But like in those moments when we have too many words, we should probably use less. And in those moments when we have no words, we're covered. And there's like the groanings of our soul. I don't know, that last line. I was like, oh,
I love that.
It's like when those moments where you just like can't figure it out.
Yeah,
like, it's already done. Like
I had that the other day. I was like really frustrated and like trying to pray, and I was like, I literally don't know what to say right now. Like I'm frustrated. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know. Just Holy Spirit, intercede, because you know better than me what's going on right now inside of me.
Yeah, and I mean, I wrote this last question, and I don't think we can answer it, nor I think it is worth us rambling trying to answer it. But I wrote like, so what is our goal in praying? And if you like approach a prayer time or session or whatever, or a moment of prayer of like, okay, so like what is my goal here? That's probably convicting, where if it's like, oh, I'm behind a microphone and I need to seem like I know what I'm talking about. Those are the moments of like, okay, yeah, like let's not focus on that. Or like being honest and go, okay, like that's at play here. I understand that. Let's try to continue on in a different direction. Or if it's in a moment of like, oh, like I need some help. I can't do this. Or if it's a moment of like, oh, like I've messed up and like this is what's going on. So I need God's forgiveness in that. So just like identifying those goals before we enter into those moments. And like in the way it's not like, okay, prayer starts now, right? Like that's not how it works. But like, I don't know, like it helps me kind of like center in less because my mind is just a mess all the time. So it helps me kind of go like, okay, so this is what this is about. This is what I actually need to know and like need right now.
Even in the midst of prayer, I think like even as you pray, like you can always keep asking yourself like, why are you praying? And I mean, naturally, like if you're already thinking like if your initial thoughts like, oh, like I like you know yourself, like you know what your thoughts like the thoughts that are going through your head. It's like, oh, if that girl notices me, it's like, so why are you praying? It's like, I already thought, I don't know. I don't know. That in itself is very convicting to me. It's like, oh, like why do we pray as you pray? It's like reminding yourself or asking yourself, why are you praying?
Yeah. So just kind of leave us with, I don't know if that's like a tip or like if that's anything helpful in life, but I mean, I find it convicting most of the time opposed to anything else. But yeah, like it's helpful, and I think it does like help us recenter a lot of the times,
For sure.
and like kind of like wash away some of those smaller things that we think we're thinking about, but we're not actually. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys. This has been episode 31. Make sure to check us out on our website, the number 3 Losers in a Church, where you can see where we're streaming, all our social media, and all that stuff like that. Make sure to check it out. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We out.
We
Have
out.
a good one.